Hey guys, Nikki here. My husband and I are both in mid-level corporate roles, and I thought it would be helpful to talk about some of the unique realities of that dynamic. So the first dynamic I want you to understand is that one of your jobs is probably going to be more flexible than the other. And the reason why that's important is that the person with the more flexible job is probably going to be the default parent for when the child needs to be home unexpectedly. So I'll give an example. My husband's a consultant. Many of his meetings are with external clients versus mine are mostly with people that I work with day to day who will be very understanding if a toddler interrupts a call because she's homesick. Therefore, if she is having to be home all day unexpectedly, I'm the one typically making her breakfast and her lunch and giving her snacks and setting up the TV with a movie. And honestly, if you are that default parent that everything kind of gets thrown on, when you're both having a stressful day, you're probably gonna have some feelings to work through on that. I've definitely had those moments where I'm like, is my job less important than his? And I know that it's not. He knows that it's not, I know that it's not. But in those moments, it can be really easy to get in your own head and be super frustrated. And I also wanna call out, it's not every time that my daughter is home where I am the default parent. It's just when we are both completely slammed, it tends to fall on me. What you have to do is be very mindful of like keeping your feelings in check and understanding that this is like a single situation in time. It's not your everyday. And also having the other person be really mindful of stepping in to help where they can, because 15 minutes of them coming in to entertain your child can make a huge difference in you being able to get a couple emails or Teams messages out that you've been waiting to do all day, but you're like context switching constantly. So another reality is that you will be spending a lot of money on daycare. So we were pretty shielded from this for the first 2 years of my daughter's life because my mother-in-law was our daycare. It was really wonderful, saved us a ton of money. But we hit a point when she turned 2-ish where we realized we wanted her to have more socialization, and we found a part-time daycare that really worked well for us. But if she went full-time at that daycare, it would be $1,500 to $1,600 a month. I actually think that's very inexpensive for our area, at least for it not being like a faith-based daycare. There's a lot of church daycares in our area that I think are less money. But most people I know actually pay closer to $2,000 to $2,500 a month. It is a huge expense, especially if you're in a demanding corporate role. You know you're gonna need to have a reliable daycare that can cover those hours if you have to work a little bit late one day. So like, for example, our daycare runs until 6 p.m. and there are days where I pick her up closer to 6 p.m. I would prefer not to, but that's just the reality. I also purposely sought out a daycare where I know that we could have her get breakfast if I needed to drop her off early on certain days. And I actually use this all the time when I have my in-office days because I know that she's gonna get a good meal and she gets to see her friends early. And then my husband will pick her up a little bit earlier in the afternoon as long as his meetings aren't running long. So coordinating schedules with your spouse also becomes super important. We have not always been great about this, if I'm being honest. My husband started going to the gym 5 days a week, and that really forced us to get good at this. So he has set days every week that he goes to the gym, and then I also recently have layered in about 5 days a week that I'm also trying to get exercise. I'm less good about being consistent with it, if I'm being honest, but I wanted to show you something that helps. So we recently got this little calendar off of Amazon that goes straight onto our fridge. It's right here. The reason why we like it is it's got enough space for us to really plan out about 2 weeks worth of stuff. So mostly this is our gym time, but we also use it to note down if one of us has like a work dinner that we know we're gonna be home late from, or a play date that we have scheduled for our daughter, or anything like that. It lets us just kind of work around the other one. This helps my husband know, does he need to deviate from his typical gym schedule? Do I need to deviate? Sometimes this means like, I'll try to pick up a gym class closer to work or something like that, depending on whatever the circumstances are. It just becomes harder to consistently care for yourself as you get busier and busier in your corporate job. So speaking of physical health, taking care of our physical health has become so much more difficult the higher we've moved in these corporate roles. because it just feels like there's less time in the day. One thing that really helped my husband with this, and he's the one that got consistent first, was he set 5 days a week that he promised himself he would go to the gym. And he had a specific workout for each of those 5 days. And actually one thing that he said that helped him, that I kind of initiated after reading Atomic Habits, was on the days that he didn't want to go to the gym, he just told himself, you just have to get there. If you go for 5 or 10 minutes and you're not feeling it, you can always leave. But the reality is once you actually get started with the workout, it's not that hard to continue it. Even if it's not your best workout, you'll feel better knowing that you've completed it. I'm trying to get into some of those same habits. Showing up for myself so that I can invest in my health long term. And truly we're thinking about our health the same way that we think about investing. So with investing, even if you're throwing little bits of money into your accounts here and there, the earlier you start doing that, the more you can take advantage of compound interest that grows and grows and grows. And that's how a lot of people end up retiring with a very hefty retirement account. I'm trying to do that with my health. Every time I go out and I go for a walk or I do a workout or, run around in the yard with my daughter, that is a vote for my future health. And it's going to pay dividends over time. And truly that is both of our mindset. The higher you get up in your corporate role, it can also be really easy to have that job to kind of take over your life and become your self-worth, become just who you are day to day. And we have also really sought out to not have our job be our entire life. This is, again, something that I feel like my husband has done a little bit better than me in a lot of ways. So for example, right now he's at a weekly lunch with his friends. They are really good about consistently meeting up with each other. I'm not as good about making that time regularly for my friends, but I'm also trying to make time for the things that I love outside of work, like making YouTube videos. For me, it's especially important to make time for the things outside of what I do as a parent, because I love the things that I do as a parent and for my daughter, but I also need the adult time for me. Making sure we cook consistently is super hard in this house because, again, we ebb and flow with how busy we are. So I'm going to show you some of the stuff that we keep on hand in our fridge that makes it really easy to crank out a meal. I will be honest with you though, there are plenty of nights that we do take out. I actually have a whole video on some of the conveniences that we take advantage of on a regular basis, and one of which is, of course, takeout food. But I do like to cook where I can. I genuinely enjoy cooking, and I also think we eat a lot healthier. So I wasn't actually planning to film this video today, so we're just gonna see what I have in my fridge and if it's what I think it is. So typically I always have carrots on hand because they're like the easiest vegetable my whole family likes to make. And sure enough, I always have like a 2-pound bag on hand. We just toss them in olive oil, salt, and paprika. And then occasionally after I roast them, I will throw some lemon zest on top. But it's like our easy go-to thing that I know that the adults like, the child likes, it works. I happen to have bone-in skin-on chicken thighs in our fridge. We always have chicken thighs on hand, whether it's bone-in or not. I've got different recipes that I like to make that sometimes I want like the skin on for and things like that, and some I don't. But chicken is our go-to. I typically only buy other kinds of meat if I have a very specific recipe in mind, whereas chicken, I can just kind of make something up, or I have a go-to recipe. There's barely any left in this. So broccoli is another one in our house that we tend to have a lot on hand. It's a quick one to make for my daughter. There's a few different ways that I do it, whether it's like sauteing it with butter and olive oil and garlic. This one is actually like some sesame oil and some soy sauce, and kind of mimics a favorite dish of ours from a Korean place. And yeah, super easy. And I know that I can throw that together in like 5 minutes. Something else that I want to be very honest about is that sometimes you're just not going to feel like the best parent. There are going to be days where you're working late, you have been traveling for work, you have to rush your kid to bed because you have to work on something really late at night, and you feel like you're not making enough time for them. You don't feel like you have time to make them healthy meals. You're like giving them takeout or processed foods or something like that. You're not able to give them the time and attention that, quite frankly, they do deserve. You should not judge yourself based on your worst days, because honestly, your kid is not going to judge you based on your worst days. They're going to know how much you love them, how much time and effort you make for them. on kind of your average days or your better days. And so you have to remind yourself to not let those moments get you down. Like I had a moment earlier this week, actually, in the car where I got a little bit down because I had actually, sorry, my cat is rubbing his face on the tripod, where I had gone on a girls' trip the weekend before, and my husband had really encouraged it because I hadn't had a lot of time with friends lately. And I immediately went into a super busy work week, and I had multiple work dinners, and I feel like I saw my daughter like maybe an hour a day. It was not fun. And I was like, I feel like I'm doing really well at work, and I feel like I'm finally balancing some friend time a bit. My parent part of my life just felt like it crashed and burned on my head for a second. And I had to remember, like, this is not your normal. It is okay to have a week like that. And I have spent like all weekend with my daughter, and it's been awesome. And now I feel a lot better, but it's just going to ebb and flow. That's going to be your reality when you are working a corporate job, that especially one that you really like, that you want to throw a lot of effort into, and you want to see yourself grow. You want to see your salary grow. You want to see your title grow. Like, there are going to be individual days where it seems like that's coming first and at the expense of your child. But you have to remember that, like, it's not that you're not putting your kid first. It's that there are moments where your significant other is going to be putting your child first, that you can focus on something else for a limited period of time. And that is okay. It doesn't make you a bad parent. I feel like it's just especially hard to swallow some of that when there's been a lot of content floating around the internet lately about how moms should stay at home. Like, there's the whole trad wife trend where it's like, hey, have your significant other take care of you and you stay home with the kids, and that's where they feel the most loved, and you get to cook them all this homemade food and all of this stuff. And it's like, it kind of buries you in this mindset that you're not doing enough. But you are. You are. But truly, like, I remember how hard my mom worked, and I saw the success that she had, but I also saw the fact that she was there for me. She went to every single one of my games as a kid and things like that. And there is a balance to be struck there if you work really hard at it. And that's why you shouldn't let those moments where you feel like you're out of balance get you too down, because you'll be able to figure out your normal balance again soon. So another thing I found is that if you have a demanding job, you have to just get creative with the things in your life that you want to do or that you need to do. So an example is, I don't tend to cook dinners at a normal cooking time on weekdays. I don't know how a lot of parents do it, where they're consistently like cooking dinner at 5 or 6 p.m. I just get done with work too late. A lot of times what I'll do is end up cooking something after my daughter goes to bed. So this could be like 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night. I'm cooking a full meal that we're then going to eat later in the week. But that works for me because it means I can cook something that I really enjoy, spend the time doing it, it's uninterrupted. Like, yeah, it makes my day a little bit longer, but it's still something that I really enjoy. And another thing that my husband and I will do together is we actually go on walks at night after my daughter goes to bed. A weird feature of the house that we bought is that we actually have a sidewalk that runs the perimeter of our house. And so we will just go on a walk after our daughter goes to bed, and it gives us a chance to talk and catch up. We're not on our phones. We're not, there's no other distractions. So it's nice to just connect, just the two of us. A lot of people would prefer to do that during the day. So maybe it's weird to a lot of other people to do that at like 10:30 at night. But again, we have this weird circumstance that allows us to do it. So why not? Keep an eye on our daughter and also get a little exercise and us time in. So it just is a matter of adjusting your life to fit your work schedule. So one thing that I've tried really hard to do is set boundaries with my job. So I don't really touch work after 6 p.m. unless it's a true need. Like, we have certain meetings that always end up being kind of a last minute fire drill. I'll work on stuff for that late at night, the night before, or sometimes if I'm prepping for something big that's happening the next day, and I'll work a little bit late. But typically I aim to, not really work before 8:30 or 9, and I won't work after 6. Even sometimes earlier, sometimes because of daycare pickup. Like, once I leave to pick up my kid, I'm not touching work the rest of the day. And I think that's a good boundary to have. It's easy to fall into the trap of constantly working late, there's always going to be something that you could do, but is everything really necessary to do right now? It's where you have to get really good at prioritization, I think, especially as a leader, and especially as you move up in the company, figuring out what has to be done now versus what can be done a little bit later. That also really helps protect the time that I get with my daughter and also the time that I get with my husband. And usually if one of us is having a bad night, it's only one of us and the other one can kind of flex and help take over some of the duties that that parent would typically do. We have had times where we are both completely slammed. On those days, often our daughter goes to bed a little bit earlier so we can knock everything out. But I would say it's the exception, not the rule, for sure. There's often a mismatch in the level of effort that I think every individual in a couple makes on pursuing time with their friends or pursuing the things that is important to them. And so if you are not making the time to pursue those things, but your partner is, you will probably feel some resentment towards your partner for having the time or making the time to do this. I actually remember reading Michelle Obama's book a long time ago, and she talked about this, how Barack would go to the gym, and she was always thinking like, why do you get to make the time to go to the gym or to go golfing or whatever? And then eventually she asked herself, like, why am I not prioritizing the things that I want to do? Why do I feel like I can't do that? Like, he never told me I couldn't. Like, he wants me to do those things too. And my husband and I had a very similar conversation. He was like, I want you to make time for doing the exercise that you enjoy. I want you to make time for your friends. I want you to make time for the things that you love. And if there's something I'm doing that's preventing you from doing that, let me know. But I don't think there is. And I realized that that was true. I needed to make the time and be clear on when I wanted to do those things. And he's been super flexible to make the time for me to pursue the things that I care about. But if you don't know what those things are, if you don't voice, what you want to do, if you don't make those plans, it's really easy to fall into the trap of just working, of just being a parent and not kind of fostering who you are as a whole person. So today we've talked a lot about the challenges of being a dual income working family, but there's a big perk, which is extra income. Hopefully extra income to spend on conveniences to make your life a little bit easier. I've got a whole dedicated video on it. Check it out here on the right, and I will see you in my next video.